Hey everybody, we're back. This is Jake here with Ryan Spadafora. We're back for Niche Site Project 3, coaching call number 4. Ryan, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm great, Jake. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. I know. Thanks for. I know you got some sickness going on there in the house with your kids. So I appreciate you making the time. Ryan and I decided to do another what I will call a late night call. Worked so well for us last time, so we fit that in. But I appreciate you making the time to get this going, man. I know you're excited to move on and talk a little bit about content.
I'm definitely ready to talk about some content.
Cool. So when we left last time, we talked. Last time we talked a lot about keyword mindset, and we went into more in-depth keyword research. And I know we're behind the scenes, you're mulling over the niche that you're going to ultimately go into, and we're not ready to publicly announce that. But just in general, how did the last week or so go? I know you spent some more time doing some keyword research. Talk a little bit about that and kind of how things are progressing for you.
Yeah, I think things are going well. I'm just gathering more and more keywords and kind of indexing them, and I'm starting to think a little bit about content when I'm seeing the keywords now.
Yeah.
I know I know what the keywords are pointing at.
Right.
What they're calling for. Um, so yeah, and I think I've narrowed down the niche that I want to attack.
Cool.
Uh, so I think I'm getting to that point where I want to start building something out here
There you go.
shortly. Yeah.
Random question for you. Are you a Denver Broncos fan?
Um, I I do root for the Broncos because I live
Oh,
here, but I'm not from here originally. I don't have a football team,
oh man.
but I'm excited for the Broncos
Okay.
that they're
I was excited that the Broncos beat the Steelers. That's why that was fresh in my mind. And we won't even, I'm just going to cut myself off. We won't even go down this road. I'm a big Cincinnati Bengals fan. And
Oh, you had a
if
tough one.
anybody's listening, and you watch the NFL, you know what happened between the Bengals and the Steelers. And you
Poor
want to talk
Jake.
about salt in an open wound. Yeah. So whenever your team gets knocked out, you always root for, sort of the hated team or the team that beat you to lose, or at least I do. So
Right.
I was a Broncos fan for a week. So I was just wondering if we had that connection. But
Well,
anyway.
I definitely root for the Broncos, but I wouldn't say like I have any, like I don't have a Broncos hat.
Okay.
So I'm not like
That's a
ride or
good
die.
qualification right there. I don't have any licensed memorabilia, so
Right. There's no
yeah.
vanity license plates or anything.
Not a fan. All right. Well, we're going to talk content tonight, and yeah, by the end of this, hopefully we'll be ready. Well, I'll talk about the assignment when we get there, but we're going to focus on content tonight, and it's a thing that a lot of folks ask about. So we're going to talk first about content structure, and again, as is always, for you and for everybody listening, I just want to say that a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, really just about every aspect of this, there's not necessarily a consensus right or wrong answer. A lot of it's based on experience and opinion, and so definitely there's some of that's going to come in here, and I think that this content plan is consistent with the strategy that we've laid out to this point. And the things I'm going to share with you are things that have worked well for me, and I've shared with you offline. Some of the sites that I have going on that I'm working on now, that things that are going well, and so the stuff I'm going to show you tonight is basically the exact plan that I follow myself, that I found that works really, really well. And I think whichever niche you ultimately go into, I think that this stuff will play out well. So hopefully it's helpful for you and for everybody listening in. All right.
Cool.
So if you have questions throughout, feel free to stop me, of course. But here's the first thing I want to point out, which is this isn't a book. All right. So it's a website. I don't know if you realize that, but some people that are coming into this for the first time, I don't know, they kind of have a hard time grasping that and just understanding how your site ultimately gets used, because that's what it's really about. Because when you pick up a book, you see the table of contents and the chapters, and you just start reading from beginning to end and all of that. And so people, I don't know, I feel like a lot of times they think of a website like that, but it's totally different. Generally, and the sites that we build is totally different, because the majority of the traffic we get is organic search engine traffic. And so what happens naturally is that the people that come to our sites, or the kind of sites that we build that are based around a keyword strategy, is they come to your inner pages and posts, your stuff that you've written about. They come to a blog post. It's not like they come to your homepage and say, oh, what does this guy have, and then they just sit down and read every page of your website. Like, nobody, I don't think anybody does that. So it's helpful to know that when you think about content structure, because I personally don't get hung up on it too much. A lot of people, in my opinion, they overthink about it, and they end up, maybe not taking action, or delaying building
Mhm.
content and stuff, because they don't know exactly how they're going to structure it, and how they're going to create their menus, and what's going to be in their navigation and stuff. And it's like, for me, that kind of stuff is stuff I figure out as I go. I have an idea of the categories, and we're going to talk categories in a minute. So I have an idea of like how I'm going to categorize things and kind of create those tiers, I guess, when I start. But outside of that, I don't come out with this huge mapped out plan. Like, I'm kind of going after keywords, and things sort of just happen naturally. So that's the first thing I just want to say, is that, um, don't think of it like a book where somebody's going to come read beginning to end. People are going to be jumping in the middle and all over the place on our website, and we just need to understand that from the outset. And so we just want to set things up however we feel is the most logical way, that people, once they are on our site, that they can sort of easily find their way around, and find the stuff that we want them to find, that we feel like is our best content, and that sort of thing. And that's just kind of what we're after when we talk about this stuff. All right, make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think you're right about that sort of, this isn't a book, um, because I do, when I've been thinking about the site, sometimes I feel like I fall into that a little
Right.
bit, where I'm like, well, if I talk about this, then that means I've got to talk about this, and if there are these articles on there, then I've got to cover the entire history of this and that, and I think you're right that it's just content, it's piece by piece content, and
Yeah, and it's, as I say, I mean, it's extremely rare, and maybe not non-existent, like that somebody's just going to come through and sequentially read everything
right,
that you wrote on a particular topic. Like, they just don't do it. And
right,
so there's
right.
no need to sweat it out or anything like that. So I talked a little bit about these last week, but I just want to sort of recap, some of the main content types that I see us doing and that I use a lot. And these are kind of broad categories. One is anchor content. And so I think of these as like long posts, really in-depth content that's usually about big keywords. So those might be more competitive keywords that we're not assuming that we're going to rank for quickly, sort of a long-term play. And I also threw like categories in there. So, like, for instance, if we went into doing a baseball site, um, something like this might be just the ultimate guide to hitting, or something just kind of high level like that.
Mm.
That you're going to have more in-depth, narrow, specific keyword stuff that's going to be other posts and stuff that are sort of inside that. But it makes sense a lot of times to have an anchor post, something that's like covers the whole topic, like super in depth, thousands of words, like the ultimate guide to whatever that might be. So we'll find space for those, and a lot of times those are things that you want to feature. And sometimes anchor content are what I call buying guides, and I'll talk about that later. But that's basically just like we talked about last week, like best baseball bags, like something like that might, in my mind, come to like anchor content where I just cover a super in-depth guide to buying a baseball bag, and
Mm.
you know what I mean. So anything that's sort of long form content, I think of it as like an anchor post or anchor content. Another is affiliate content, which is made to sell, and so that what I just talked about is a bit of a gray area. These things can kind of work
Hmm.
together. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive, as you can tell. But anything where you're promoting a product, reviewing a product, comparing products, this brand versus that brand kind of stuff. And then social content, that's stuff where we'll look at stuff that's going to be easily shareable, and stuff we can promote to other bloggers and people in our niche and things like that, in the hopes of getting links and getting them to share it socially, and things that people will like in that regard. And then low KC content. So this is stuff that's low competition keywords where, our goal is to get organic traffic, to draw clicks on ads, or to get, opt-ins through lead magnets and things like that. And so sometimes those can be shorter posts. We don't need as much content for that sort of stuff because it's easier to rank for. And I'm going to talk about each one of these more in depth here in a moment. I just want to kind of set the groundwork for, again, just high level, the kind of posts and things that we're thinking about. The other thing is, just again, we're talking about content structure here. So I like to use categories to logically break up the content. And so we'll think about that a little bit as we're creating content. But, you can kind of figure it out as you're creating stuff. I don't have this set in stone before I, start putting pen to paper, so to speak. I'll start creating content and then kind of see how it's going and think about what's the most logical way to do categories. But it's thinking about the user. So if it's about baseball, we might have a category for equipment. We might have a category for hitting, have a category for pitching, that sort of stuff. Like we might feel like that's the best way to do it, or you could do a category of offense and a category of defense. So like it's a little bit up in the air and open for interpretation. I think it's just, again, whatever you feel like is going to make the most sense for your audience to logically structure something. That's how I think about categories, because it's just something that should be useful for the visitor to the site, to where a lot of times in my navigation I'll have just a category page in the navigation. So if you click on, for instance, if I had a baseball site and I had a bunch of different posts and stuff that were going to be about becoming a better hitter, and so I just make a category for hitting. So everything in there, I just sort of check a box and say this is in the hitting category. And then in my navigation, I might actually have sort of at the top of the site where you can click on hitting. And when you do that, it's very easy to set up in WordPress, where basically it just automatically shows them a page full of all the stuff that you've ever categorized as hitting. So they see it all in one spot, and that just kind of happens automagically. So if it's helpful to think of it that way, that's kind of where how we'll use categories. Is just the most logical way to organize your stuff for when people are on your site and they want to go look at a category and see everything that fits that category. That's how we're going to do it. All right. So, but how broad or how specific those are, it's up to you. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and I don't think that there's a right or a wrong per se. Make
Cool.
sense
Yeah,
so
yeah,
far?
absolutely.
Okay, cool. And then content structure again on the homepage. So I might have touched on this last week, but we talk about we're going to do a collection of keywords and all that, and that kind of plays into what I said about most of your traffic coming to your internal pages, because we're focused on keywords with each piece of content. But then on the homepage, we're not really worried about a keyword. So whatever our brand is and whatever niche we go into, we're not really worried about our homepage ranking for anything specific necessarily. But the homepage, usually we will have links to our best content. So a lot of times I'll structure it to where we'll probably talk this in a future call a little bit more in depth. But I like to, if possible, have like a lead magnet on the homepage, like something they can opt into. So a free download or something like that. But then also have links to anchor content or feature content. So like what I feel is like the most important stuff, or like the best stuff, or the stuff that I really want to push people to. Like I want to make sure they see this, almost like a billboard. I have that stuff on my homepage, so it's like you can't miss it. Like kind of like start here. Here's our best stuff, and so that's sort of what we use our homepage for. In addition to probably below that, show our most recent posts. So as we're building this stuff out, and that's what I say here on the last point on this page, is that most of our content is going to be a post and not a page. And that's, sort of WordPress terminology. But the main difference is that a post just shows up as a blog post. And so when you have sort of what is technically a blog page like I'm talking about, where you want to show your most recent posts,
Hmm.
obviously only posts show up there, not pages. So pages would be something like a contact page or an about us page or about me
Oh,
page,
okay.
that sort of thing. A post would be pretty much everything else. So you're going to have sort of that stuff that never changes: contact, about, privacy policy. Those are pages. Posts
Hmm.
are pretty much all the other content you're doing. That's going to be posts. And so that way people, when they go to sort of the blog page, they can just see the most recent stuff you've published, and it kind of just goes in order there. Make sense?
Yeah.
Site structure, any questions about that? Anything that
Um,
comes to mind?
so when you talk about the difference between a post and a page, um, does Google treat those any differently? I mean, does it?
Not that I know of, to be honest.
Okay.
because I mean the URL structure and all that ends the same. Like I'll set up my once you set up WordPress and stuff, we'll set it up to where basically it's just the URL is just to be the post name, and it works the same for pages. So like whether I create it as a post or a page on WordPress, the URL looks the same. It's mywebsite.com slash whatever the heck I want it to be, so that part is the same. And to the best of my knowledge, the only difference is what I mentioned is that the posts show up on your whatever your blog page is, where it shows your most recent posts, and pages are exempt from that. And I think that's the only difference. So honestly, you could probably do everything as a post or everything as a page, and I don't think it's going to make or break a site. As I say, I usually do that sort of whatever you want to call it, contact about. I wish I had like a name to sort of summarize all those types of pages. I do those as pages. So I probably have 5 or 6 pages when I do a site, and I might have, 100, 200 posts in the end.
Got it.
So, all right. So let's move on to talk about our content plan for a minute. All right. So anchor content. This stuff generally should be 2,000 words plus, if not more. I mean, I showed last week one of my best performing pages on my Ballpark Savvy site, which was the ultimate guide to taking kids to a baseball game. That's like definition of an anchor post in my mind when I talk about this stuff. It was like, I think it's like 8,000 words, which is, probably a little over the top. But it performs really well, and it's sort of paid off in that way. But there's a reason for this. Like anchor content, anything that's sort of long form content is kind of what we're thinking. And let me jump out. I just want to show you. I don't know if have you ever seen this graphic before here? This is sort of a breakdown of a study done by SERP IQ about the average length of the top 10 results in Google. Have you seen this?
Nope.
Okay, good. So so basically it's from 2012, and so they did over 20,000 keywords in an analysis, and then they showed that on average each of the top 10 results had over 2,000 words on the page, like 2,000 words of content. So according to this, the number one spot on average was 2,416 words, and the number 10 spot was 2,032 words. All right, so the moral of the story is that on average, longer content performs better, and at the top of the search engine, you need to have thorough content, especially for things that are slightly more competitive and things like that. Long content tends to stand out and perform better. And this article, I'll probably link to this in the post because it's really good on Search Engine Land. It goes beyond that, and it points out some things that Google has said specifically, where they sort of lean towards in-depth articles. And then they go down and they talk about conversion rates and shareability. Like there's a lot of reasons that long form content does really well, and so that's where I sort of get that number of 2,000 words or more. So when we do those kind of high level main things of our niche, we're going to want to make sure that those are like really well researched, really in-depth content to really have a legit shot to rank.
Got it.
Make sense?
Sure.
Cool. All right. So yeah. Lower keyword competitiveness content. So when I say this, I'm just talking about low competition keywords. KC referring to that keyword competitiveness score from Longtail Platinum. So stuff like that can be much shorter. That's usually what I do, because a lot of times it's a really specific search, and you've probably seen this and maybe your mind already went here as I was talking about doing long form content. It just stands to reason that not everything deserves 2,000 words. If we're teaching somebody how to hit a baseball, or we're teaching somebody, how to be a better base runner or something like that, we could probably come up with easily 2,000 words and go into all the different nuances and things like that. No big deal. It's a big topic. But when somebody says, I don't know what I don't have a good example on the tip of my tongue, but when they ask like a really specific question, like last week it was something about how to drill a bowling ball to hook or something like that. Remember that was like a really specific question. Like there's no way you're getting 2,000 words out of that. You know what I mean? Like you might find an image that you can use and then accompany that with 3 or 4 paragraphs, and you've pretty much given them everything they need to know about that question. Like you've answered their question. So anything beyond that just becomes fluff and a waste of time, really. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And so what I found is, in my personal experience, is that for stuff that is low competition, stuff where you're in the low 20s, high teens, typically stuff like that, as far as the competitiveness score, that you can do something that's 500, 750 words, still sort of a well-researched piece of content, covers the answer, you sort of nail it, but it doesn't have to be long, and you can still rank with stuff like that. So not everything has to be 2,000 words, not by a long stretch. Our lower competition stuff, we can definitely get a lot shorter with that content when needed. Okay.
Hmm.
um, the other thing, this is just general principle type stuff here for a content plan. So use lists, use videos, short paragraphs, and images. And basically, I sum all that up to say be skim friendly. And there's a lot of, if you think about how you navigate down through a web page, you probably skim for headlines, and you read this full paragraph, and then you skim down and look for something else that catches your attention, and you read that. And that's what a lot of folks do. And generally online, I mean, data will show you that people have shorter attention spans today than they did 3 or 4 years ago, and they're more impatient and things like that. And so we just want to make sure that we create something that's visually appealing, but when you look at it, it's not this big wall of content. So like when we create a 2,000 word guide to whatever it is, you don't go there and it just looks like you're about to read somebody's term paper on hitting a baseball or bowling a
Right.
spare or something like that, right? You want it to have multimedia, you want it to have a lot of subheaders, you want it to have really short paragraphs. A lot of times, like just one sentence on a line sometimes, you might start with just a single line of, to kind of intrigue people. You want to get them reading. And so you want it to be very easy on the eyes, all right? And that's going to improve how long people are on the page, and people sharing it, and all those sorts of things, which are all things that help you in Google as well. So the longer people are on your page, and stuff like that, the longer they kind of stick on your site, those are really good things. So doing these kinds of things, breaking it down into a list, inserting images and video when possible, and breaking up blocks of text into really short paragraphs, those are all things that are just going to help you all the way across the board. Make sense?
Yep.
Cool. All right. And then next is one that I like to do, which is link out often, ideally to high quality sources. So as you're writing almost anything, I like to do a lot of outbound links. And really, it's just a natural thing to do. Like, in both these niches that you're considering, you know a fair amount of stuff off the top of your head, and that's fine. But particularly for folks that don't, or when you get into stuff where you can't just rattle off the answer off the top of your head and like just write it from memory, you're going to be doing research online, and so you're going to be going and searching some of this similar stuff and finding sources, and your job is really to, I think of it as like you're sort of compiling it in a more useful way. So there might be 15 different sources out there online that sort of kind of address this topic that I'm looking for, and I take all those and sort of take the best out of each, and I put together like the most helpful guide to whatever it is that you're wanting to know. And so when I do that, I always make sure it's just obviously for uh, I guess legality or whatever, or morality, however you want to look at it, you should cite your source. So if you're referring to somebody else, we all know that from English class in high school and that thing. So you get something from somebody else, you cite it, whether it's a quote or paraphrasing, that sort of thing. But when I get an idea or whatever, I'll say according to whoever, and I link to their site, and so there's no reason to skimp on that. When you look at sites like Wikipedia and things like that, they do a ton of linking to internal pages, but then also externally to their sources. So sometimes it'll be in the context of your paragraph, like I just mentioned, according to whoever, Ryan, and I link to Ryan's website and I quote Ryan or whatever. Or at the end, you make a list of resources like you might do for a paper in school, or additional links, or that sort of thing, and list out 5 or so helpful things. And what that does is it's a quality indicator to Google as well. So I think it's helpful for your reader, because if they do want additional information, you're giving them other places they can go, and hey, that's fine. You're trying to be the teacher, you're trying to be a helpful resource. But also for Google to understand that, it helps them understand what your page is about even more, and then it also helps them understand that when you link out to high quality sources, it's a signal to say, hey, this guy did his research and this is probably a good piece of content. Does that mindset make sense?
It does. Yeah, that's not something I would have thought about.
Yeah,
Um,
it's that has performed really well for me. I did a site that was in more of a it's in a niche that there is a department in colleges that studies this topic. Okay, and so in that particular site, I did a lot of like links to .edu sites, which are super high authority, high quality sites, and it just made sense, you know. So I would like refer to research by whatever university. I link out to a .edu site, and I would just do that all throughout the content. And that site has done tremendously well with organic search, and I think I really think that's a big reason for it, is because we link to a lot of sources in our content, which is good, and it takes time, to do that sort of stuff. And so again, it's just um, it's not a big laborious thing, but at the same time, it is a quality indicator and kind of shows Google and your visitor that, hey, you spent some time putting this together, which is a good thing. So, and then the next that goes along with this is link internally often. So we're going to link externally often. We're also going to link internally often, and so this is really about spreading authority across your site and then also deepening the relationships. So let me talk about that for just a minute. So
Yeah.
links, when you link, like, you have a page about hitting, and then in the context of this ultimate guide to hitting a baseball, you link internally to maybe some more specific posts that you have about hitting. So how to hit the ball to the opposite field, maybe that's a blog post that you did. And so in your ultimate guide to hitting, you touch on the subject, and then you say to read more, or to read more in-depth information about hitting the ball the other way, click here, and that links to your own page about hitting to the opposite field. That's sort of an example of what I mean. You got with me there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So doing that stuff liberally and often is a good way to deepen the relationship. So somebody who really is reading your ultimate guide to hitting, and that's kind of why they came here, like, oh yeah, that's really what I'm wanting to find out more about, is going the opposite way. They can click on that and they can get more in-depth information, and you've helped them. Now they're on their second page, which is good for Google because they've clicked through to additional. They've gone deeper into your site, but you're also building trust and you're building a reader there, somebody that really likes your site. So that's the deepening the relationship part. Like, it just adds value and it makes sense. The other part is about spreading authority. So those links, I'm not the foremost expert in links and sort of how authority is passed, but I do know that internal links count. So like Google indexes those, and they see links to your pages, and so we've seen success with, like if I write something for the Longtail Pro blog, a new piece of content, a lot of times I'll go back and look through stuff that I've written over the last year, and I'll try to find an old post that maybe I published 6 months ago that's closely related to it, or it's a similar topic, and I'll go edit that post and find a good place that I can put a new internal link in to my new post that I just published. So like, it's a way to get a backlink to my new stuff, and so it helps Google index it faster because I'm going back to existing content, linking to my own stuff. But then it also sort of counts as far as that's kind of a link, even though you did it for yourself. And so you don't have to worry about doing anything crazy or fishy. It's just, I think it's the good thing about doing a lot of your content yourself early on and really knowing your topic, is because I find this stuff comes to me naturally. Like when I'm writing a blog post about whatever, and I get to a certain topic or whatever, I can kind of remember, like, oh yeah, this is sort of similar to something else I wrote. And when that's the case, I just figure out a way to sort of link to that other page. So I just try to have that loosely in my mind. I don't have a particular number that I'm shooting for X amount of internal links per post or anything like that. It's just, if I feel like it's a good spot for it, some of my past content will come to mind, like, oh yeah, I'm going to link to that. And so it's a good way to spread that authority, because what happens is, you're going to have, that's the point of, at the beginning, we talked about different posts serve different functions and things like that. And so just naturally, some of the stuff that you're going to put out is going to attract more links. It's going to attract more social shares and things like that. And so that's a way that you can help control spreading that link juice out, as people like to call it. I'm not a big fan of that word, but, but it's a way you can sort of control that a little bit. So, when you have like a really popular post that tons of people have linked to and it does really, really well, in that post, you can internally link to 6 or 7 of your other posts on your site, and it sort of goes to the next level, but it kind of passes some of that link juice onto those. Does that make sense? You're kind of building a little chain there. So you're sort of spreading the love across your site. And so that's why generally internal linking is a good idea. So I do a lot of linking in my posts, internal and external.
Cool.
Um, All right, and then keep things interesting by varying your types of content. This is where we're going to spend some time here talking about just some of my go-to content types and content ideas. And most of these, maybe I don't guess any of these, I just totally made up. They're, at least at some point, I got the idea from somewhere. But some of them I'm going to show you the source of it because it was super helpful to me, and it'll be something for you and for folks watching to read and check out. So let me jump out of the post here or my presentation. And the whole idea behind this is just, like I said, you don't want everything to just come and look like an essay on your site. It's
Right.
boring to read. It's people aren't going to stay. It's people don't like that. And so you want to have a mix of content, and figure out a way to kind of keep things interesting, keep people off balance a little bit, and figure all that out. And so what I'm showing you here, this is on the Digital Marketer blog, and so if you go, I'll link to it in the page here, but if you go Google search the ultimate list of blog post ideas, I'm pretty sure this is the first thing that you find. But they have this huge infographic, and I realize this is kind of small case, and I'm going to point out some of these, but it's a great resource to get your mind going a little bit for some creative ideas of what you can do besides just going in and writing a text article. So let me like I said, I'll link to that for you so you can check out the full thing, because I show you this to say that, first of all, a lot of the ideas I'm about to give you come directly from this, and I'm going to expound on them a little bit and give you my take and how I've used them. But this is digital marketer stuff that I'm about to share, a lot of this, and it's really good. I mean, this stuff, the most recent site that I've done, which I shared with you offline, that's doing really, really well right now. I mean, this is sort of what turned the page for us, was when we sort of discovered this content, because it opened up to us. We sort of realized, man, there's a lot of creative stuff we could be doing, and we can knock it out pretty quick, and it really kind of took us to the next level. So there's a lot of really good ideas here for everybody to check out. So let me jump back to my presentation, and I'm going to talk you through some of these. So, doing good so far? Any questions to this point?
No, this is great.
Cool. All right, so our go-to content types. The first is just a how-to post, and this is one of the first ones on their list, and this is sort of a no-brainer. All right, there's nothing fancy here, but you find a lot of keywords that are how do I, how to, whatever. I mean, people started out like that, like, so they're looking how to do something, okay? And so it's for those kind of specific searches that are almost always perfect for a how-to post. And a how-to post just simply teaches someone how to do something specific. And so it can be just an article, and a lot of times these do end up being those shorter articles that I mentioned, because you'll typically, in my experience, you find a lot of low competition keywords that are how to do something very specific in your niche. And so when you do that, again, you don't have to write thousands of words. You can write 500 words and maybe find a video or something online that you could put with it, or maybe it's just text or whatever, and call it a day. So usually it's a low competition keyword, and you're just teaching them how to do something specific. Very, very simple, nothing to it, all right? The next is a buying guide. And so this I've talked a little bit about, but think of it as a way to educate potential buyers. And so when we get keywords like last week we talked about best baseball bags, things like that, that they're looking at an item, or they're a buyer type keyword, we create a buying guide around that. And I think it's important to do that because I think of it as educating the buyer. So I'm going to talk to them about possible pitfalls and the price ranges and the things you should be thinking about. And so it goes beyond just trying to show this person a product. And you've probably seen that, where people will just start dropping in reviews or trying to send them to Amazon. And eventually, that's what we're going to do too. But I like to surround it with, I really want you to understand the decision you're making. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want them to feel like they're an informed buyer, and I'm going to show you some of the top reviewed items on, for whatever category that we're talking about here. So those are intended to sell a product. They tend to be long, so maybe it turns into what I call an anchor post, where it's a couple thousand words or more if we're trying to rank for something kind of competitive. So we have a really complete buyer's guide. The next is a YouTube cut up, and this is straight from the digital marketer folks. I've used this myself. It's really effective. I think it'll be effective in either niche that we do. It's a great way to knock out really helpful content in a short amount of time. And so what it is you base it off of a YouTube video, and as you already know, when people put stuff on YouTube, there's a share button right there where you can embed that video on your site. And so you don't have to just, if you're going to embed a YouTube video on your site, obviously it doesn't have to be yours. You can embed basically any YouTube video on your site. That's sort of part of the deal. Like, when you upload YouTube, you're uploading a public video, right? Unless you, of course, market private or something. But so the idea behind a YouTube cut up is that you take that video, you embed it on your site, and then below that in written content, you break down the steps from the video using text or maybe taking screenshots and sort of creating images out of the video or something like that to kind of supplement your text. So, if the video is a project and they're showing you how to build something or how to fix something like that, I would, come up with a clever title, how to fix a muffler from a 1986 Chevy, whatever, and then I embed the video where they're showing how to do that. And then down below, I might write out a list of what you're going to need, and then I go and I put step one, and basically what I'm doing is you can do it quickly because you're kind of writing what you learn from the video. You're not just transcribing what they say, but you're summarizing it for your reader. And so there's value in that because now they have the video along with some helpful, kind of a helpful written guide that supplements it. And so that would be what I'd call a YouTube cut up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When I say what I didn't make up that term. Like I said, that's a digital marketer term. I wanted to be careful about that, not make it sound like I made up some of these names. I didn't. Next is the content aggregator. So this is another one that I've used quite a bit, and it's it can be used in basically any niche. And as it sounds, you're pulling together ideas from around the web on a particular topic. And so, digital marketer, they're the masters of this kind of stuff. I gave an example. Stuff runs together on me because I do webinars, so forgive me if I'm giving you examples that I gave you in the last call. But one example that I remember they used for this at the conference on their Survival Life site, which is a web property owned by Digital Marketer, they have a post, I believe it's called 36 paracord projects for preppers is like the name of the post. And so what they did was, I think a few of the ideas are their own, but it's just stuff you can make out of paracord. So it's like keychains, bracelets, I don't know, whatever. It's a list of 36 things, and they rank for all kinds of keywords for this post. But 90% plus of the ideas are not theirs. It's projects that other people had posted, and they do kind of like what we talked about earlier. So let's just say that the bracelet was on somebody else's survival site or whatever. They say, hey, here's Joe Schmo who shows you how to build a paracord bracelet. Here's a link to the tutorial on Joe's site. So they give Joe the credit. They throw up a picture of the finished product from Pinterest or from Joe's site or something like that, and they move on down the list. And so they just aggregate a bunch of content from around the web that fits around a topic. So in this case, paracord projects. So rather than having 36 different pages about one's about a paracord bracelet, one's about a paracord keychain, etc., they threw it all into one big post, and they were able to rank for tons of different keywords, get a bunch of shares because people love that post, and does really well on social media and things like that. And so great for sharing, also great for ranking organically. So it's a really, really powerful post and something you can definitely get creative with inside of your niche. Sound good?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Good. All right. I just keep checking in to make sure you're with me. I
Yeah.
know.
No, I'm here.
Yeah,
I
it's good. I know I'm doing most of the talking, so sorry
No,
about that.
no problem. I remember seeing kind of a lot of these on the site you showed me.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Um,
and you'll see a lot of the stuff when we go through it, at least for me, when I first saw this blog post, and we're actually members of Digital Marketer, what they call their lab, which is sort of a membership where they publish a lot of stuff. And it's really, really good for anybody that's out there listening that's interested. I would give it a big upvote if you're thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, once my eyes were open to some of this, at least I started thinking about, oh yeah, I guess I do see other people doing that, but I
mhm.
never really thought about it. Like I would be on whatever it is, BuzzFeed. I mean, BuzzFeed is like the king of the
Right.
content aggregator, and they're, I don't even know what they're worth or whatever, but I'm sure they are making a boatload, and it's probably a huge whatever business. I mean, you see it everywhere on Facebook, and then they've got a bunch of
They're worth a boatload.
yeah, and they've
Right.
got a bunch of competitors. Like this is the majority of what they do, or at least how they sort of made their name. 26 things only kids from the 80s are going to get. I mean, how often do
Right.
you see that crap? It's everywhere. And do you think that they're not like, it's not like original stuff. I mean, they've got to where they do create some original content. But I think the bread and butter of what they do is content aggregation. They go find content around the web and they throw it together, and they think of like a clever way to package it like that, that people are going to want to share. Kids from the 80s, like, oh yeah, totally, and so whatever. It's not their stuff, it's just ideas they pulled together in a clever way. And that's what it's all about. So I think, like I said, for me, when I saw some of this stuff, it just opened my eyes. Like, yeah, I'd seen that before, but I'd never thought of it in this context. Like, oh yeah, I guess I could do that too if I applied the same principle to my niche.
Mhm.
So a lot of stuff's just hiding in plain sight, I think. Um, the next is embed reactor, and this is similar to the YouTube cut up. The difference is that you might use it in a little bit different context because it's not necessarily a YouTube video. Another common example of something that is sort of meant to be embedded on other sites is infographics, and people love infographics, and they're very shareable and all that. But there's sites like Visually and others where people go and they share their infographics publicly, kind of like the YouTube of infographics, if you will. And they've got a share button right on there where you can go embed it in your site and all that. And so if you find one that's sort of relevant for your niche, again, thinking of a clever title and sort of making it a part of it. And what the embed reactor is all about is, first you embed some content, so video, infographic, maybe a slide share presentation, something like that, and then you react to it. So below it you have sort of your response, and it's some written content. Again, it could be, what are my takeaways from this infographic, what I agree with, what I disagree with, whatever. You're adding some value. You're adding your thoughts. You're with your audience in mind. You just kind of react to it. And so, again, it's quick to put out there. You're using sort of the visual part as somebody else created it, and you're embedding it and pulling it in. And so you sort of have a base, and then you just, add your thoughts. Add something that's going to kind of add to and make that even better for your audience. And so, really good stuff, really quick, and again, it's a nice change of pace. We talked about variety of content, and so these kinds of things like an embed reactor, it's probably not going to be the highest traffic page on your site, but it definitely can be helpful. It can be something where you just write 300 or 400 words. You don't have any real plans to rank for it, but it just feels like something your audience would like, and so it's a good thing to just kind of mix in. Not everything's going to be a home run by any means. We're sort of just building out this whole deal. All right, make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, the next one is a stat roundup. This is another thing on the digital marketers list of ideas that I showed a moment ago. Nothing earth-shattering here, but again, can apply to a lot of different niches. And again, it's kind of like the content aggregator in a way. Only in this case, you're pulling together interesting stats, related to your topic. So whatever it could be, stats you didn't know about this, or stats that'll surprise you. And when you hear those sorts of titles, your mind is probably going to Facebook and other things where you
Yeah.
you see these get shared a lot too. And there's a reason for that. Like, people like them, they work, and so why not do them? So the concept is very, very simple. You go find stats that other people have done. You list the stat, you put a source. I mean, there's different ways you can arrange it, but it could be as simple as just a list of 1 through 10 or however many that we're going to do, and putting a nice clever title on there and that sort of thing, and call it a day. So again, it's quick content to do. It's content that's useful. It's content that people like, and they like to share it. So it's sort of a win all the way around. A good thing to mix in and kind of help our variety factor as far as our content goes.
Cool. Quick question.
Yeah.
So like, let's say you do a stat roundup and it gets shared a lot socially,
Mm-hmm.
um, and people start linking to it.
Yep.
So now this links back to your page.
Yeah.
Is that good for every other page on your website, or does that only boost your does that boost your domain authority across the entire site? Will that help your other articles?
Yes, it
Yeah.
will in the long term, and more directly is like the stuff. That's why I mentioned internal linking before.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that you're able to link to, and maybe maybe you can, maybe you can't in that case, but you're going to have stuff in your navigation. You might have stuff in your sidebar there where you're linking to internal content and things like that, and so that stuff even more directly benefits. But yes, overall, getting quality links to that sort of thing will help your domain authority, which ultimately helps in the future the content that you put out. It helps it to rank quicker, it helps it to rank better, because it's kind of like the rising tide lifts all boats sort of thing. Absolutely, yeah, it helps the site wide.
Cool.
All right, so next one, good question, by the way. Next one, I hate this name. I may have said this as a listicle.
Yeah.
It just sounds weird. List plus article equals listicle. If anybody's out there wondering why the heck people say that or whatever, that's all it is. So it's sort of a list that you kind of turn into an article. And again, this one is it's just a staple. It's very versatile. It's a nice way to break down long content. And so I've thrown out the term anchor post and things like that. A lot of times that'll turn into a listicle. When you think about, for instance, if you were going to write the ultimate guide to hitting a baseball or something like that, it might just be easier in your mind, as far as a way to arrange it, to turn that into a listicle. So, well, hey, let's break this down into 10 steps or something like that. And I'm going to list them out 1 through 10. And these are going to be like subheaders in the content. But it's not just a list. It's a list, and after each point, so point number 1, getting the proper stance or whatever, or staying balanced. And I'm going to write content about staying balanced. And I'm going to have, links to other resources and that sort of thing. I write it just like an article, short paragraphs, being skimmable, all that stuff we talked about. Point 2, whatever it is, keeping your hands back, that sort of thing. And then I do the same thing. And so you're writing sort of semi thorough content about each point. And before you know it, you're quickly into 2,000, 3,000 word type articles because you've got like this really big listicle. All right. So that's just one example. But I mean, it's a great way to, like I said, to just sort of mentally break down a topic, make a list out of it, and then inside that list, just go in depth on each point. And before you know it, you've got like a really good guide to whatever that topic is. So it's a really good one to sort of have in your back pocket.
You could call it an article list if you want to.
I like that. I'm going to
So
change it.
you could change the whole internet.
Yeah. Wow.
Let's start
That's
it right now.
it's official. If anybody's listening, there's now an Arctic list. Yeah, I'm gonna do that and just like say it, in like a tone like everybody should know what I'm talking about.
That's
Like
how
like you're
it's
an
done.
idiot if you've never heard of that. Oh, you can do an Arctic list. Wait,
That's
what?
right.
Arctic list. Like you know what that is, right? All right. So the next one is a quote post. Very simple, just like it sounds. Kind of like the stat roundup. You gather quotes on a particular topic and you throw them all together into one big article. You don't even necessarily have to like reach out and ask somebody for their quote. Like I'm talking about going and finding quotes that are readily available. Like you go look for somebody's thoughts on a particular topic, if it's bowling, you go look for stuff from professional bowlers and things like that. And what the best bowlers in the world say about bowling a perfect game, or I'm not a bowler. It comes through. If it's baseball, what the best hitters in the world say about hitting with 2 strikes. You know what I'm saying? And you go look for Tony Gwynn's approach and Wade Boggs and whatever, that sort of thing. And you're looking for just quotes or things they've said over the years about that topic. Maybe that's not it, but hopefully that's illustrating the point. And then you have something that's really valuable because then you put it together. Say, hey, here's the best hitters in the world. Here's what they said about hitting for power, that sort of thing. And it's kind of cool. You're like, oh yeah, I'd like to read that. But again, you didn't do anything original except probably the introduction and the conclusion. Inside of that, you're just pulling together quotes from around the web, and you've thought of a creative way to package those where it's gonna have some value. And it's again one of those things that people like to share. Also interesting for the audience. Also gives you some variety in what you're doing, which is sort of a common theme here. And then I think this is the last one that I've got on my presentation. And this is a crowdsourced post. So it's, there's some similarities here to some of these, but just different in how you approach it. Basically, this is just asking influencers or experts their opinion on a question, and again, pulling it all together. So the quote post, typically you're going and finding quotes that exist, or maybe they're, common quotes or inspirational quotes, things like that. This is where you're using email to, like you've thought of a topic where you want to pull together sort of thought leaders in your space and ask them something and see what they think. And you're emailing them and trying to get their input on it and say, hey, I'm putting this together, really like to know. And you ask them a question. And then you come back on your blog and say, we asked the 32 foremost whatevers, what would you do in this situation? And here's what they said. And by just getting their responses back, you've got 80% of your article written for you, right? Because they wrote the response and you're just going to quote them in the article. So you kind of, you take it all and put it together and that sort of thing. But that is the crowdsourced post, something that everybody else, basically they give you their thoughts, their opinion, you package it together. And so, again, really powerful, really shareable. That one is also good because you are making connections and you can get creative with all this stuff and really, get your mind rolling a little bit about how you could use these. But I think you can find use for these in just about any niche. But it's a good one because once you're done, you can then email those same people and say, hey, just a heads up, man, publish the post today. Thanks again for giving me your input. And a lot of times they'll link to it or they'll share it on their Twitter or Facebook, something like that. And if it's an influential person, it can bring traffic and a lot of new eyeballs to your site. And so it's a big time win-win there. You're getting great content that's unique. You got some influencers' response to your question. Great for your audience. Also, you've got a really good linkable asset, as they say, something that
Hmm.
they're going to want to share on their own right because it makes them look good. You've called them an expert or whatever and that sort of thing. And so a lot of times they'll share it for you as well without you really even having to ask. So it's a big one that definitely works well.
Cool. That's a good idea.
Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Um, Yep. So I'll come back to the presentation in just a minute. I had pulled up examples of a few of these. And I just wanted to show you from just kind of random sites. Some I had thought of, some I just sort of found, but I thought it would be helpful. I don't have one for every single thing we just talked about, but I just wanted to show you some real world examples. And again, I'm not affiliated with any of these sites or anything like that, just to kind of be clear. This is on popsugar.com in their beauty section. Maybe this is just a beauty site. I don't even know. But this is kind of an example of an embed reactor. Okay,
Hmm.
or it could be. It's similar to the YouTube cut up as well. So this is DIY, the hottest nail trend on the internet, the glass manicure, which I'm sure you're well versed in. But what they do is, and this may be their video, maybe not, but again, it doesn't matter if it's on YouTube. You can embed it on your site. So they have a video at the top that shows what the heck they're talking about, and then down below they talk about it. Shattered glass manicures are all over all this stuff. They quote a couple people about what a great trend it is, give you a little bit of advice. If you're going to do it, make sure you do this, you don't do that. And then down at the bottom, they list out the products used, and might even be affiliate links. But everything that was used in the video, they make a little list of it for you to have it right there. It's very simple. Again, in our case, we would take somebody else's video on a topic that of interest for us. We give it a good title, put their video in, and then we do the written content part. That part's original. That's us giving our reaction or us kind of adding on to what they taught in the video. Here's a little bit more. Here's a way to sort of make it more interesting, more helpful. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So that's just one example there. Here's an example. This is the sweethome.com, which these guys, I believe, have a few different sites like the Wire Cutter. I think they're all the same guys, but they're like, to call them like an affiliate site would be an injustice because I mean they're just monster like authority sites in their space, and they do all kinds of products. But their product reviews, they're what I would call buying guides, are just amazing. And I think this is helpful to show because this is what I have in mind. This is the kind of stuff that sets you apart, Ryan, from we talked like in our very first call about the typical niche site and the typical site that you can just tell right when you're there that they're just there to push
Hmm.
you a product and trying to get you to go buy something on Amazon or whatever, and it just feels, I don't know, less than quality, and you're obviously your like antennas are up. Like this seems like an odd site. This site isn't like that at all. But ultimately, that's a lot of what they do is they send you to Amazon and other places and make money as an affiliate and make a whole lot of money doing that because they write amazing buying guides. So this is the best bike pump floor standing model. They last updated it last week, whatever. And a lot of times when you scroll down this stuff, and I'll just scroll down it quickly, throughout it they intermingle like their top picks, but they have good images of the stuff they're talking about, and I mean they cover every possible thing you can think of. Flaws but not deal breakers, a stylish runner up. So I mean you go down and they've sort of got it. You can kind of see short paragraphs, the budget pick, the competition. They talk. I mean it just goes on and on and on and on. So obviously this is long content, and they get a lot of comments about it. But if you're in the market for a floor standing bike pump, this is like exactly what you want. You know what I'm saying? Like they've
Hmm.
done all the research for you and put it right here. Like this is going to save me hours of my time. Like I can spend 15, 20 minutes reading this and I'm going to feel like, wow, I really feel confident that I'm making a good decision right now. So that's what we want to think about when we do our sort of affiliate stuff, which is going to play a part of what we do. We want it to be about educating the buyer. We're not thinking sell first. It's about creating a buying guide. So this is a good one, great example. If anybody's out there, check out the sweethome.com. Like I said, I think the other one's called the Wire Cutter. I mean, they do amazing buying guides. That's the kind of stuff we should be shooting for, not crappy niche site stuff. Agreed?
Agreed.
Cool. All right, let me buzz through here. All right, this one is Search Engine Journal, 25 amazing facts about Facebook. And this is basically a stat roundup. So they do a little bit of a longer introduction where they have some stats in there already. But then they do facts, which a lot of times are basically just stats, how much Mark Zuckerberg spent, their NASDAQ thing, all this stuff. And it's just as you can see, a list of 1 through 25, total monthly users, increase in users, all of these just kind of facts and stats sort of thing. And, you know, that's pretty much it. 352 shares, almost 48,000 reads, which obviously it's a big site and all that, but it just kind of illustrates the point that, hey, there's not a whole lot of original content on this. Like, you can put this
Yeah,
together in a pretty short amount of time, and people still want to see it, and people like this kind of content.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Here's one. This is on entrepreneur.com. It's a great example of a quote post. So 10 inspirational quotes from women business leaders. And again, this stuff is just applicable in so many niches, man. Look at this, has got almost 50,000 shares written this past June. And here's what it is. So Sarah Blakely, um, somebody, the CEO of Facebook, Lori Greiner, who I know of Shark Tank fame. I don't know personally. I just know because I watch Shark Tank. So like me and Lori are good friends. Lori Greiner, good friend of mine. She's on here, so I'm very proud of Lori. How far she's come since we've worked together. But you can see all they did. I mean, they pulled in a headshot, probably from the person's website or something like that, which is cool. You know, adds a little bit of a visual element to it.
Hmm.
Give a little image credit down here, which is important. But then they, pull in a good quote from Lori Greiner, and then they have like a paragraph describing who Lori Greiner is, the queen of QVC, and et cetera, et cetera. And they go down, and they have 10 of these, and it has 50,000 shares. And, this is a big brand, but this model is not hard to replicate. And you could
Hmm.
imagine how you could use this in a lot of different ways. And again, it's great to mix stuff like this into your posts, and it breaks up the monotony of just having a bunch of articles, just kind of like typical written content. I mean, this stuff's cool, and this is also stuff where absolutely, even though you're gonna have some big influencers and stuff like that, when I do things like this and content aggregators, personally, I kind of intentionally try to mix in like really big time people and like middle tier to small timey people that I feel like I actually have a chance of connecting with,
Right.
because what happens is, like, think about whatever, you're in the print business, right?
Hmm.
So let's say that somebody put together a thing tomorrow on whatever website, and it was like the greatest tips for your printing business ever from the foremost experts, and the top three are like the Michael Jordan of printing, right? And number four is Ryan Spadafora, and they got a quote from you, or they got some tip that you gave, and then they come back to you like, hey man, put together this post of some of my favorite guys in the printing industry, and just wanted you to know that you're in it, and you see your name next to the Michael Jordan of the printing industry, whoever that is, and you're like, holy crap, like I just got upgraded big time, right? Like I'm on this other tier. So that's just sort of a little game in my head that tends to work well, So like when number one is Mark Cuban and number two is like some random blogger that has decent domain authority, I feel like I have a pretty good shot of random blogger sharing that, because he's going to
Right.
be like, hey guys, look, I'm on this article with Mark Cuban, that sort of thing. So you can sort of play with some of that in your mind as well. But no, this stuff is awesome. It's a dual-edged sword kind of thing. Here's the final example I'm going to show you. This one is sort of famous in our space, like internet marketing, the most creative link building post ever. So if you search creative link building or whatever, this is always right there, and has been for years. And this is the content aggregator, man. John Cooper is the guy behind Point Blank SEO, and they have a course and all that. But in this post is just other internet marketers, and he'll say who they are, what company they're from, and has a link to it. And he just essentially posed to them this question: hey, what's your most creative link building tactic that you would share? And just got killer responses. So it turned into just this monstrous post, and it does really well for him. It's kind of the one that kind of put their site on the map, I think, in a lot of ways. At least from what I've heard, it was one of the early posts that sort of did really, really well. And Point Blank is a pretty big site and all that. So, but it's just an example again of 90+% of the stuff that we're looking at.
Yeah.
John Cooper didn't write this stuff, but he reached out to these people and was like, hey, what are your thoughts? And like, oh yeah, and the people that know the topic really well, a lot of times they're happy to share. Not everybody's going to respond and give you a great response, but some will. And so it's a math thing. You do enough of that, and you're like, oh yeah, now I've got this really good piece of content. It's something that John could have never come up with by himself, because it's other people's insight, and you're just pulling it together. So getting that mindset shift a little bit on some of your content, I think, is helpful. Just knowing that this type of stuff you have at your disposal when we dive into the next step, which is taking these keywords that you're finding and putting some content to go with them. All right, so a lot of these tools and even more are at your disposal. um, any questions at this point?
No, this is good stuff.
Okay, good. All right, let me jump back to presentation real quick, and we're to the point of wrapping up here.
Okay.
So our content builder, all right. So this is we're not going to really show this on the call. And I've told you this privately, but just to say as well that we're going to be using the Thrive Content Builder and Thrive Themes, sort of the whole package, Thrive Leads and all that. Ryan has access to that. So I want to say thanks to the folks at Thrive who provided that for our
Yes.
niche site project.
Right.
Really, really cool. I'm a paid customer of Thrive, so I'll just go ahead and tell you I'm biased. I really like it. I've sort of fallen in love with it over this past year. But their content builder is excellent. It uses a drag and drop interface in WordPress. I had used other drag and drop type plugins for WordPress that didn't work well at all. And this one I was super impressed with. Very user friendly. And it also makes creating visually appealing content like the stuff we just showed so easy. Like you can make stuff look so much better than you can just a standard WordPress post. You'll be amazed. So like it's one of those things like once you let the genie out of the bottle and you start using it, you're like, man, why was I ever just using standard WordPress? Thrive is like that. So I'm telling you guys, if you've not tried it, you're missing out. So Ryan's going to be using that to build his content, and he's going to love it. And unfortunately, I guess for Ryan, like he'll never know any different. You know how that is? Like you don't appreciate the things that you never had. So maybe we should make you use just like the standard WordPress post thing for like 3 months, and then we'll upgrade you to Thrive, and then you'll appreciate it a little bit more. Be like, wow, this is a lot easier. No, we won't do that. But anyway, so you'll be spoiled from the outset. The other thing is Thrive Leads, which we'll be using, and that's a little bit down the road thing, but that's integrated with Thrive, and it's just a great way to use pop-ups and a bunch of different ways to A/B test and then just capture leads. Giving people lead magnets. So as we get into capturing email addresses to start building a list, which is important, and we're going to do that, their system just makes it super simple. There are other tools that do it, but just the fact that it's sort of integrated all in one ecosystem it's very, very easy to use, and you're going to like it. So anyway. So your assignment is, one, get to know Thrive. I know you've looked at it a little bit, but they do have excellent thrivethemes.com. They have excellent videos and stuff that show you how to do this stuff. And there's a lot you can do, but just getting familiar and comfortable with it. And as we go, I'll kind of give you some tips and things that I've picked up on and different things like that. But like for instance, you can save templates. So like if you go, let's just say that you built like a stat roundup or something like that, you can save it as a template. So the next time you come back and you're going to do a similar post with a different set of stats, you can just sort of insert that template and make changes from there. So there's a lot of like little time saving things you can do. So get familiar with the tool, watch some of their videos. And their content library is excellent to teach you how to do that. And then next, start finding keywords in this new format that I'm about to show you. It's very simple, but it's just a different way to sort of start thinking about and putting down, in your Google Doc, start putting down content ideas as you're finding keywords, so we can kind of get a running list and refine it as we go. And let me show you that briefly, and then we'll wrap up. So I just marked content schedule, and I put a couple examples in here from the keywords that you'd had last week, I believe, from baseball and bowling, just to show you what I mean. But you'd already been building a list where you're finding the keyword, marking the KC and all that, and the search volume, and that's all well and good. But I would say adding to that, as this week we're going to start figuring out the niche for sure that you're going into, and then thinking about the categories and those sorts of things. So if you want to put a publish date, you can. I think for now that's optional, but as you get out, like if you start building content and you want to kind of schedule into the future or kind of use this to set a goal of when you want to have it done by, you can do that. But then having the post category there of what it's going to be, and then the keyword, so you kind of know where it fits, so it helps you sort of visualize that, and then the content type. And so this is just for you. You're probably not going to use everything I showed you tonight, and that's fine. Or you may use a different type of content that I didn't talk about tonight, and that's fine as well. But this is just a way for when you find the content, go ahead and mark down what you think is sort of the best fit on the content side. Maybe it's an embed reactor, a buying guide, et cetera, et cetera. Mark that down there in this column. And then the final one is it's a good exercise to start thinking about the offer or the purpose of that page, because you want to have something. And at the very minimum, if it's a how-to post and we don't have much there, maybe our purpose is, hey, we're going to have AdSense on our site. Maybe they're going to click an AdSense ad, and that's fine. But sometimes it's about our purpose is really we want them to buy an affiliate product. Or our purpose is we really want to get a lot of opt-ins from this. So we're going to have like a really good lead magnet on this page at the end of the post or something like that. And so just thinking about And this stuff is a little bit down the road. Okay, so don't let this like intimidate you, but start at least going through that exercise, because what I envision is what will be nice to have is a month or two from now, as you start building out content, we're going to start talking about and thinking about lead magnets, which are just things, free downloads, things of value that you'll be able to give to your audience in
Hmm.
exchange for their email address. When I say an offer, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And so it'll be good if we're talking about baseball, bowling, whatever. It's good to have two or three different lead magnets that kind of touch on sort of different subtopics in your niche, so you can kind of mix those in. So like if you have, for instance, if it's baseball, if you have a lead magnet that is sort of designed to be about hitting, that
Hmm.
would kind of be anytime you're doing anything in the hitting category, we're probably going to try to send them to that lead magnet. Make sense?
Yep.
So it's just a way to sort of categorize and be thinking about the purpose of that. So I'll give this to you, but let's kind of add in a couple of these columns, and as we're building out keywords, let's start at least thinking about these. None of it's set in stone at this point, but at least going through and thinking about the content and organizing it that way.
Cool.
Cool. All right. So I think that's it. No, well, no. The last thing I had here on your assignment is, it's time to pick a niche, pick a domain. We talked a little bit about that offline, but definitely want you to be doing that. The sooner the better on all that.
Hmm.
So try to do that this week, and if you have any questions or whatever, let me know. And then pick a Thrive theme. I'm kind of I'm limiting you a little bit there, but they've got 8 or so themes, and we can talk a little bit about that. And feel free to take a look at them and do demos and see what you like. But
Yep.
the fact that they've sort of given that to you, and I use them, and it's the same kind of thing where it's kind of like, do you have like an iPhone, or do you have a smartphone?
Yeah. iPhone. Yeah.
Yeah. And so once you have an iPhone, you don't usually buy like a Samsung tablet. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of nice. Like if I'm going to get a tablet, I'm probably going to get an iPad, that sort of thing, because you're in this little I ecosystem. It's just weird
Exactly.
to go
Yep.
get a Kindle or something. So in the same way, like if you buy a Samsung tablet, you're probably going to have a Samsung phone, that sort of thing. I kind of think of it like that when it's Thrive. Like, you can use the content builder and stuff, just to be clear, with other themes that are not Thrive themes, like it would work,
Hmm.
but it's like perfectly compatible with their themes, and like
Yeah, that
it
makes
just works
sense.
together like really, really
Yeah.
well. And their themes are good, and whatever, we're not out trying to win a design award, we're trying to we're trying to make money, and so their themes are responsive, and they got everything you would need. They're fast and all that stuff, and like that's the stuff that's really important when we're concerned about making money. We're not worried about some going and paying $5,000 to get somebody to do some custom theme for us or something crazy
Right.
like that. That's like the last thing you should do if you're trying if you're trying to sort of bootstrap a niche site. So
Right.
anyway,
Just
they're
sync.
really good. I think you'll like them, but take a look at them, and start figuring out ones that you like. But all right,
Cool.
uh, that's about it. Any questions about what you're doing at this point? Assignments, anything?
No, I think I'm just excited to get going on it, and it was really good to see all those different content categories and ideas. Those are really good.
All right, cool. I'll send you some of this stuff over in an email, just so you have it to kind of reference back. I know it was a lot to go through.
Been
Um,
taking.
yeah, definitely. So you can sort of refer back to it, and as you get going with all this stuff, it gets easier, it gets better, and your brain just starts to think that way.
Right.
You'll see keywords, and you'll think about the kind of content it should be, and kind of having these at your disposal, I think, will be helpful. So, anyway, man, yeah, get to work on some of that stuff as you have time, and we're ready to roll a little bit. Get that domain, and we'll here in the somewhat near future, we'll be revealing your niche and eventually your domain publicly. So, but we'll try to figure that out so you can start building content and get a jump start on this and start making some money, man.
Cool.
All right,
All right. Sounds good.
all right. Thanks everybody that's still listening. That's a wrap. We'll catch you next week.